Let's talk about The Bookstore Sisters by Alice Hoffman. Come on in, welcome to my home. Today we're going to review the book, The Bookstore Sisters, by one of my favorite authors, Alice Hoffman. And I have to tell you she is one of my favorite authors because I love the whole series of practical magic books. They're really good, and I suggest that you read them. The movie is just as good in the house in the movie, but we're getting off the topic. Let's talk about The Bookstore Sisters, which really is an enchanting short story, and I should have said short story from the beginning, but it's an enchanting short story that relies on something which I have heard a lot, and that is the quote, "What is remembered lives." The Bookstore Sisters focuses on our main character, who is Isabel Gibson. She and her sister Sophie grew up on an island with a family that ran a bookstore. And I don't want to give a whole lot of spoilers away, but there are spoilers. Spoiler alert. So what happens when we start off is we meet Isabel when she's in New York. She's been divorced for 5 years, and we even get the wonderful statement that she is good at forgetting. That's really important for the whole story. Isabel is very good at forgetting, and that leads to our own problems, and that leads to problems that I think what helps make this story so relatable. And what you're going to get out of the story might be something completely different than what I got out of the story, because everybody's view is different. And how that works is, two people can go through the same exact event, but no two people will experience the same exact event in the same way, because their past experiences and what they remember of the event are really vastly different. Sometimes what you remember of an event can be completely different from the actual event itself. Sometimes that's to protect yourself, sometimes it's just because of what it is, and sometimes it's just because people have a tendency to remember the bad things. Remembering bad things is really easy. When you think about yourself and somebody asks you to tell a few things about yourself, a lot of people jump into all the bad things about themselves. And that is, well, to say the least, really bad. Why is it we are so good at remembering the bad things and so bad at remembering the good things? Maybe if we remember the good things, it'll make life just a little bit better. So how does this tie into the Bookstore Sisters? Well, easy. Isabel receives a letter asking for help from her sister to run the bookstore that she ran away from when she was a young person, like just after being a teenager. And this is problematic because Isabel has no intention of going back to that horrible, horrible life that she had there. Her memories of it are just bad. But it's her sister. And as most people are, she of course wants to help her sister, but what exactly will that entail? Now the cool thing about Isabel is that she's a dog walker. And so one of the things that she does is she takes back all the dogs that she's walking except for one, who is Hank, who's sort of like a mutt. And Hank, she takes with her to the island. Which is good and is bad, but it also shows you the kind of character that Isabel is. What kind of character is she? Well, she's a person who does things kind of impulsively, which can be a good thing and can be a bad thing. So, what memories does Isabel have of the bookstore, of her life there, her family, her parents who have both died, her father who stayed in the bookstore, the sad things that happened to her while she was on the island where the bookstore was? As you can tell, they weren't that great. And those are the things that she truly remembers. But once she starts going back to the island, she runs into Johnny, who was an old boyfriend, and she finds out that the letter was actually written by Sophia's daughter, Violet, who she has this interesting relationship with her. Because Sophia had gotten married and Isabel did not go to the wedding. That's not a good thing. I don't even think she was invited. But when Sophia's husband died, Isabel did come for that funeral, but of course Isabel, being Isabel and making things worse, got drunk and made it to the funeral late. And that was realistically was the last time that they talked. So how can we get these things to reconcile with each other? Well, probably with a little bit of magic. One of the things that I do love about Alice Hoffman's books is the ones that I have read that I really enjoyed had a little touch of magic, and this one has it. Part of that magic is just the magic of memory. And some of our memories can be based in our childhood, like the books that we read with our parents, the books that we read as a kid, and there are lots of books in this throughout it. Mary Poppins, Half Magic, also the fairy books of Many Colors by Andrew Lang, which help shape the characters. I mean, when you think about your history, your past, what has shaped you? Are there books that have shaped you into who you are? Are there memories that you keep with you? And then you have to question, did I remember that as it happened? Or am I remembering just the bad part about it? Or sometimes just as bad, am I remembering just the good parts about it? We need to balance those things out, and I think that's what we find with Isabel, is the fact that she needs to balance the good with the bad. And sometimes to get that balance, you have to go back and face what you think was horrible and remember for all that it was. Now what's really cool in this book is there's a lot of talk about food in this book, which actually surprised me that they don't include recipes. Next week I'll have the recipes for some of the dishes from the book. But the nice part about this is the fact that you find two sisters who are going to reconcile with each other, maybe or maybe not, depending upon what one can remember and what the other thinks should have happened, and how are they possibly going to come together. I don't know. It is a very, very short story, and it's very much worth reading and seeing what your interpretation of the short story is, because your memory will be different. My memory of the book from when I first read it to when I went back and looked at it for this review was a little bit different. Then I did remember the good with the bad. I remember wanting to know more about the sisters, wanting to know more about their mother and their father and their life before, during, and after. And that's one of the problems with a short story. It's a short story. You don't have all of that. You don't have the different chapters or the different books in somebody's life, and that can be an issue. I really do think that eventually this will become a full-fledged book because it's all there. Now, a lot of people were complaining that they felt that this was so short that it had no beginning, middle, and end. But I think it does have a beginning, a middle, and an end. As Isabel tries to reconcile her life, her memories with what actually happens, remembering stories like Mary Poppins that she read, and then passing that information on to her niece, which is a really cool kind of thing to do. We can pass lots of things on to people who we know just by recommending books that we read, or recommending things that we think the person would like, or show a little bit more about ourselves in what we recommend. And that can be interesting, it can be good, it can be bad, it can be fun, it can be sort of scary. One of the books that Isabel remembers is Half Magic, where children learn that they can get these wishes, but they only half come true. And it takes them a little while to figure out how to work with this, but they do eventually figure out how to make things work for the better for them. And that's something I think Isabel does do in this book. It takes her a little while, but you learn more about her. She learns more about herself as she learns to work through everything that she has. And the magic part about this is kind of cool. After reading the book, I had so many different questions, like, was Isabel and Sophie's mother a witch? When it comes to the food in the book, there are things like Feel Better in the Morning cupcakes, Orange You Glad cake, which is an orange cake with buttercream that is certain to cheer up your day, Fall in Love fruit cake, which So Isabel can't exactly find all the hidden ingredients in it, so it hasn't come out yet. No More Sin cinnamon rolls, delicious and good for the well-behaved and the unruly. Never get lost oatmeal cookies for hikes and adventures. One of the quotes that I love from the book is, "Good-hearted people bake." Sort of resemble that. But it shows, they're trying to show that people bake for a way of expressing their love, expressing their feelings to somebody by putting their emotions or something into that item so that the person who receives it gets those emotions. Even though the sisters had their problems, we find out that Sophie paid for Isabel's divorce. So even though somebody might be on the outs with each other, not speaking to each other, there still is love. Sometimes we need to remember that. When it all comes down to it, the thing that happens at the end is Isabel remembers. Isabel remembers, and that's what lives. If you haven't read this story, I really think it's one of those quick reads that you will enjoy, and maybe you'll take something completely different away from it. I would love to hear about that. So my next video, which will be next week, will be baking some of the foods that are mentioned in this book. Okay, I have to do some research on those recipes, so we'll see how that comes up. The next book that we are going to read is The Wizard's Butler, Book 1 by Nathan Lowell. I know very, very, very little about this book, except that it's another one of those cozy type fantasy books. So we'll have to see. Maybe it'll be great, maybe it won't. I have high hopes for this. But I would really like to hear what you think about The Bookstore Sisters, the short story. It is well worth reading. I'd also like to hear if you've read Practical Magic, seen the movies or anything about that. What did you think about that or any of the other Alice Hoffman books? She does have another one coming out in November, I think, which is The Invisible Hour. I am looking forward to that. If there's a book that you would like me to review, let me know down in the comments. At this time, I'd like to thank these people who help me, or let me, review books and read them and tell you all about them. If you would like to join these people on Patreon or possibly become a channel member, just hit that button. It will take you to there. And the thing cool about this is that we get the early access to the videos. So this video actually came out 2 weeks before you got a hold of it. And we also do discussions on what we should do on the next video, what you think about things. They are a great group of people. You can ask questions. They will respond to you and to me. And it's a great place to hang out. So go ahead and check that out. I'd like to thank you, and I hope I get to see you again the next time you stop by.